A quorum being present, this meeting of the SSA number 61 Hyde Park Commission is called to order. Pursuant to the applicable law and my determination that the attendance by remote means is necessary because an in-person meeting is not practical nor prudent due to the declared public health disaster caused by COVID-19, the meeting will be conducted via video conference. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the SSA website shortly. So good morning, everybody. I'm going to take a quick roll call for the minutes. Anthony Beach, Greg Gutman, that's me here. Angie Marks, Shaka Mitchell, Charles Newsom,
Present.
James Nurse,
Present.
Mary Rogel,
Present.
George Rumsey,
Here.
Nancy Stanek. Okay. Rod, thanks for sending out the minutes. Are there any objections to the minutes before we vote on them? Well, in fact,
Greg, I had one correction.
Please.
It's minor, but I think it needs to be entered. In the list of people who attended, also present, I think we need to add Jordan Sorrell and Aaron Gettinger. They were both in the meeting. They were both quoted in the minutes, so they should be listed in the also present.
thank you. All right. Well, the minutes are accepted as corrected. Thanks, Ramon. Questions and comments from our guests? Would any guest want to have any questions for the commission? Okay, financials. Isaac, you're on. Finally, a good financial report.
All righty. Well, good morning to everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. So our financials as of 12/31/2022, as Greg indicated, we now have a liquidity. So total cash in the bank at the end of the year was at $92,003 compared to $64,958 at the prior year. We'll start now, once we get the detailed reports, adjusting that accounts receivable of $57,000 that we received. But so total assets at $386,479 compared to $359,434. Accounts liability is at $8,254 compared to $17,030. Deferred revenues $272,688. All this to get adjusted with all of our year-end adjustments. And now that we started to receive disbursements at the end of 2022. Due to SECC, at 12/31 was $35,937. They have since satisfied their obligation in the month of January. So total net assets is $69,598 compared to $65,375. So $4,224 gain. So total liabilities and net assets at $386,478 compared to $359,435. Any questions on the statement of financial position as of 12/31? Alrighty, so budget versus actual. For the month, as you see, we received $57,352. For the year, we collected $205,809. So we had a shortfall in 2022 of $89,932 that we expect to collect during the first quarter of 2023. Coming down to the expenses in 1.0, we had $1,500 for the month, $39,508 for the year. So we may have some invoices that come in that would change that for next month. So right now we didn't spend $54,493, so we're under budget. For 2.0, we spent $20,097. For the year, we're going to spend $82,677. So we were under budget by $27,404 for the year. We didn't spend anything for 3.0. So that was $16,250 under budget. 0.0, we just spent $1,055. So we're under budget by $39,000. We didn't spend anything for 5.0, so we're under budget by 7,000. 6.0, we spent 928 for the month, 15,000 for the year. So we were under budget by 6,500. For personnel, we have 5,200 for the month, 62,436 for the year. So we're a little bit over budget by 4,436. So for the month, we had a favorable surplus of 28,499. For the year, with a net surplus of 4,224. Any questions for the statement of budget versus actual as of December 31st, 2022 versus 2021? George, you tracking with the tracker?
I sure am. Shall I proceed?
I'll
Please.
release to you, sir.
All right, let me pop up my screen and find the budget tracker, which hopefully you all received. The commissioner's budget tracker and Isaac's financials are within $1, and that's due to the rounding of cent issues, because in the budget tracker we just round everything off. So we're reporting the same numbers, the same outcomes for the end of the year. It will be a very different budget tracker come our next meeting, because let's face it, the last few months we have not had very many expenses to review, and there have been very few changes to the overall budget tracker other than the additional income that we received in December. And we do know to expect additional, which will be considered late collection income. When I was looking over this morning, thinking if there were anything in particular I should call the commission's attention to, I had a little idea to perhaps change how this is presented, just add a new wrinkle to it. So this will go into effect with our new budget tracker for 2023, which our finance committee will work on in the next month, and then we'll have at our March meeting. And that is, if you notice on my screen, if you look over at the left-hand side, you'll see these little bars down the edges. It seems to me that sometimes we get so lost looking at the trees, we miss the forest. Sometimes I want to see the big picture. So I've added a feature over here on the left-hand side that will let any of us collapse the budget tracker and just see the summary information. So I'm just going to hit the little one up here on top to see the first level information. And what that does is it just gives us the categories that we budgeted for and the percentages of our budget that we have spent in that. And through the use of the split, I'm just going to scroll over so that you can actually see a little more precisely how our year ended up. That looking through all these numbers, we have spent 201,000, we had budgeted 348, therefore we've spent 58% of what we had budgeted for, which leaves us 42% still to come in the late cost collection, or to be carried over for the new budget for 2023 when we do our revisions for 2023. You can see here that we spent 42% of our customer attraction. We have much higher percentage of the public way aesthetics, because those were often contracts which we had obligations to go ahead and pay. No expenses in sustainability, only 3% of business development, no expenses in safety. Management, we have to pay the bills, 71%, and personnel just a tad over what we had originally estimated. So we end the year in good shape. We will start the year in better shape. And so be prepared for our next meeting to have a much more interesting, discussable budget tracker to look forward to. Questions about this?
Great new feature. Thanks. Rod?
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm getting my New Year's wish. Now I have a fully funded SSA that I get to run now. So I'm grateful for the amounts that have come in. Our current distributions that have been deposited since the end of last year through roughly today total about 129,500. $23.41. With that, it allowed us to fully reimburse the SEC, which we saw in Isaac's report of about $35,937. So we were able to not only fully reimburse the SEC, we had other bills that came through, and some of them we saw in the budget tracker that came up. There was a bill that we had gotten extended payment through April of this year, and this was for Clarence David and the holiday baskets. We were able to pay that in full as well. And so we are fully paid upon our commitments, and any other disbursements are now coming out of our account. And so that's more or less it for my financial report. Is there any questions?
Any questions or corrections to any of the financials that we talked about? George, include George and Isaac's. Okay. The financial reports are accepted as circulated. Thank you, guys. Rod, SSA reconstitution.
Yeah, just 3 things. One, that the committee has been formally created and the names have been submitted to the city earlier this month. There is a reconstitution committee meeting tomorrow. And what's on the agenda to be discussed is the choosing of a reconstitution consultant. We got 2 bids. So we will meet tomorrow to choose one of those 2. And we started the formulation, or I sent out kind of a tentative project plan. That's really going to be completed when the consultant is chosen. But this gives us just the preliminary start, so that when the consultant comes in, we'll be able to talk to the consultant and make better use of that consultant's time in terms of the project and delivering the reconstituted SSA. So that's all for the reconstitution. Many of you all are members, so you already have information regarding this. Is there any questions regarding reconstitution?
Yeah, Rod, could I request that you give us just give the commission just a very, very, very brief overview of the people, the organizations that replied to the RFP? We don't need details or names or anything. Just, are they good? Are they qualified? Do they have credentials?
The organizations that have replied, one is local, one is out of state. The credentials that they've presented so far are very good. They have experience in many areas. Some of them, they've done this before. Some of them will bring in new ideas in terms of how to do reconstitution. So that's more or less an overall. I don't want to really get into, as George, you said, kind of what the RFP, the responses were, but we'll be able to have a very good and fruitful discussion in the meeting tomorrow. Okay, any other questions about reconstitution? Okay, Greg.
Let's move on to programs.
Okay, programs. Now that there's work to do, this is one of my favorite topics now. We're developing RFPs for some of the contracts that are expiring. That's with the flower baskets, litter abatement, and power washing. We're using the standard formats. I know the city, Karen in the library has some standard RFP formats, as well as RFPs that we've used in the past. So I will be getting those together. We'll send those out, and just like the reconstitution process, in the March meeting, we'll decide and have to choose what vendors we're going to go forward with on those projects. We're also planning other programming throughout the year with our vitality partners, planning things like the farmers market and other programming that we do throughout the year. And now we have the finances to begin working on some of the larger products. projects such as the viaducts. Any questions about programming? Greg and George, as you all mentioned, we've got a lot to do this year. The SSA is coming to a hard stop. What happens, what reconstitution is more or less a recreation all over again. So we don't have legacy that carries over from this SSA to the new one were to be reconstituted. So all of the money that we get, we have to spend all of it by 12/31, all of the programming. This isn't the year where we can do multi-year programming because it won't cross over. We can anticipate and say we're going to do reconstitution and it's going to be successful. We can do studies and things like that. Those are things we've done before. But really all of the planning and all of the emphasis, the financials have to happen this year. Mary?
Rod, does that also mean that the commissioners don't carry over and that we all have to be reappointed?
That's correct. The commissioners don't carry over. So even though, and Charles, I know this is going to hit you a little hard because you did the paperwork. Eric and Wendy done some of the paperwork. Everyone's terms also in 12/31. Charles, you had a date that went into 2025.
Correct. I said, oh, hallelujah. I'm good to go. And that's over.
Well, that's over. You've got about what, 11 and a half more months. And we all have to do this all over again.
At what point do we make the applications?
From the city's guidance, everyone starts to do it about 6 months out. So in June, well, pretty much in June, we'll know where we're going with this. We'll know if we have the requisite signatures. We'll have a pretty good idea if we're going to reconstitute or not. So 6 months out at the expiration of everyone's term, which is everyone, Diane and Raymond and I will start to talk to you all to get you all to fill out the applications, gather all of the paperwork required for that. But think of the new SSA as we've never done this before. So everything that you've got, if you filled it out recently, you still pretty much have your information. If you haven't filled it out in a while, consider this now the time to gather that information.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Greg?
Keep rolling. Next item.
The next item is discussion on making committee meetings. This is the finance and the program meetings, public meetings. In our finance meeting, George and Greg discussed this, and this was something I wanted to bring in front of all the commissioners. If we make those meetings public, they run just like this meeting. We create agendas, we give the 48-hour notice, we adhere to the Open Meetings Act, and we just invite a wider number of people. Just like we're seeing on this meeting, we have a couple of community members. I think open meetings are good. Open meetings, one, lets the public know what we're doing up front so that when things come like we want to reconstitute, we don't have to really educate people from scratch. The other thing is they require us to be a little bit more careful about what we say. It's not that we're lax in our other meetings. It's just we're a little bit more precise when the public is there. So in terms of making those meetings public, we have to structure that. Remember, just like this meeting, we're conducting everything over Zoom. That may not always be the case. And I know we took money out of meetings. That money will have to come back into meetings. Definitely as we have our commissioners meetings public and in attendance again, the same will be true for any other public meeting we decide to have. So that's a discussion I'd like to open up and get the thoughts of the commissioners. What are your views on that? George and Greg, you all want to lead that discussion?
I asked Rod to do this, so I guess I'll start. The issue is that we have enough commissioners in the subcommittee meetings that we filled all the spots without, we add one more commissioner and we're sort of in violation of the Open Meetings Act. So if Mary, for instance, wanted to attend a finance committee meeting, she couldn't. So this allows every one of us on the board to attend any meetings that we are interested in attending. And then Rod, there's an extra expense you mentioned. Why would there be an extra expense?
Those expenses were incurred when we were meeting in person before.
Okay, so as long as we stay on Zoom, there's no extra expense.
Right.
Okay.
But as you mentioned at the beginning of the recording, we are holding this meeting over Zoom because it's prudent to do so. As we begin to get further and further away from COVID or any other reason that would keep us, there is nothing that says that we have to continue on Zoom. I think it's a good idea, maybe do hybrid models, but I think getting out in the public and beginning to have these meetings again, as we do public meetings, is a good idea. Yeah, it's one thing also, you explained it. I'll explain that a little more. What happened was that we had 11 commissioners. The applications of 2 of our commissioners somehow did not go through in time, so it knocked our numbers down to 11. I'm sorry, to 9. And what that did was it knocked our numbers down from what a quorum is and also what a majority of a quorum is. Those terms basically say that if you have a quorum or a majority of a quorum, which is in our case 3, then it has to be an open meeting. So we have to be very careful of how many commissioners that are talking about current business, the current SSA business, together in one place before we have to open that up. There's another question that says, well, we have more than that on the Reconstitution Committee. So why isn't that an open meeting? For that one, Diane Raymond and I have to be the police. I spoke to Mark Roshan at Department of Planning and Development to ask him about that. And he said, well, it's fine as long as we don't talk about current SSA business. So at our reconstitution meetings, really, Roger, you're a member. Roger can pretty much ask any question that he wants. Our commissioners have to be careful not to discuss current SSA business. And what Diane Raymond and I will do is we will enforce that rule to make sure that our commissioners are complying with the Open Meetings Act. So, Greg, I just wanted to insert that in there to give everyone more context.
Sure. Does anyone else have more comment on it? George, you're about to say something?
Charles had his hand up.
Oh, Charles, please.
Okay, so maybe I missed it. I would like for Rob just explain why are we burying this SSA, the current SSA, and giving birth to a new SSA. Maybe I missed. In short, could you just give me why?
I'll do the best that I can. And Karen, you're on this call. Karen is from DPD. So Karen, if
I can give the short version, Rod.
okay, go ahead, Diane.
Charles, the short version is when you reconstitute an SSA, and you know, SSAs have to do it every 10 to 15 years. Part of the city policies is everything starts over. It's like brand new. It's just part of the policies. They don't really tell us why. Maybe it's to keep SSAs fair. Maybe it's to keep the momentum. I don't know. You know, I really have not been given anything specific.
Okay,
Part of the policy is start over. It's like starting over. So, but once we do this, it's good for 10 to 15 years, and the next generation of caretakers will be sitting in these seats.
I guess one good thing that we don't have to change everything. We just move forward as an SSA. You know, that's the best thing, best way if I can think of it, as being, we don't really lose anything. The progress we made, we just continue on.
I would guess the city never intended an SSA to be in perpetuity. You know, they want to make sure that it sunsets, and it's typically issue oriented, not like so broad like we have ours.
Okay,
Okay. What's number 8 in our agenda, March 2023 Finance Committee and Commissioners meetings. Rod, is that what we just discussed?
No.
Okay.
Diane and I are going to be on a conference on the last week of March. So what we are asking is to move both the finance meeting up 1 week and the commissioners meeting up 1 week. The March meeting is typically a night meeting. So we're just asking to move those up because Diane and I are going to be out of town at a conference on that last week. Because we submitted those, the commissioners meeting, we submitted those to the city and everyone else. I mean, we've publicized those meetings, so we would have to, we'd have to make that adjustment and publicize it again. The finance meeting, if we've now decided to make those public, we have to go through that same process.
What would the date of the finance commission of the next finance meeting, the March meeting? Sorry.
The date of the finance meeting would be moved up to the 14th, and the commissioners meeting would be moved up to the 21st. It would be the same times, just a week earlier.
Understood. I think we needed we probably approved these meetings earlier, so we should have a motion to change them. Can I get a motion to change the finance committee to March 14th and the commissioners meeting to March 21st?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to move the dates. Anyone, let's have a discussion before we take a vote. Does anyone want to bring up some questions? Clarify anything? Okay. All those in favor of moving the commissioner dates to the finance committee to the 14th and the commissioners meeting to the 21st, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, motion passes. I believe that takes us to the chairman update. So as you guys have heard in this meeting, we now have money to spend on programs, which is great news. And I want to make sure that we're spending according to the priorities that we set. So last year we set the 2023 budget and approved it, and that sort of becomes our action plan. It's really broad what we voted on, right? There's like 63 different lines of where money should go to. So I think because it is so broad and covers everything virtually, we haven't really done a great job of conveying our priorities to Rod and Diane. So I asked them if they could come up with a list of like the top 10 items that they want to finance and work on in Q1 for us to see their priorities and have an opportunity to say, yeah, we agree.
I've got a lot of thoughts going through my head, as you all can see. I think that the commissioners have a lot of projects. I mean, Diane and I and Raymond are basically here to try and facilitate, build a consensus on what the commissioners want. Diane and I and Raymond, we see a lot of this every day. We try and bring a lot of this to your attention, but I think it's better to get this information from the public and the commissioners than just us three trying to figure out, well, what's best.
Okay. What does everyone else think? Makes sense to me.
Yeah, my 2 cents. I thought we had some conversations. I don't know. I lose track of time when we had them, but that we very much wanted to focus, obviously we want to focus on everything, but that there was also a priority on focusing on some of the physical improvements that, sort of impact on the corridor. So that was my recollection, and I would support thinking about what some of those opportunities might be.
Angie is absolutely correct. We had identified 5 areas that we were most concerned with. We know we have ongoing, contracts and things that we want to do, like the street cleaning and the baskets and stuff. But with the additional income that we now have, we had talked about our priorities. Top of the list was the viaducts, whatever we can find to do to improve the quality of the viaducts. Second was the Lake Park landscaping initiative. We'd also thrown into that Nichols Park, the west end of 53rd Street over by Kentworth Plaza, and then finding ways to perhaps do one other project in either along 55th Street or east of the viaduct, or to spread it around the whole footprint. But it seems to me the first place we really want to find out if it's reasonable, feasible to spend money was with the viaducts. They need it.
Okay. One of the things in terms of how these things get carried out, I mean, we have a programming committee that I would prefer all of this go through. I know some of us have talked offline individually, things like that, but we have a programming committee, and Mary and Anthony and I have spent time trying to discuss these things. So well, Mary, you're on the call. I mean, you know what the priorities are. These are the things that we'll try and work through and flesh out through the programming committee, because it really gives it gives that area something to really focus on. We talk about a lot of things in the programming committee, but this list here now says, okay, these are the priorities. We got 11 and a half months to work on that. Mary, let's see what you and Anthony and I could really come out to flesh out some of these things. Because Greg, as you said, what we have in those categories are very broad.
Yeah.
So I'd like the programming committee to really be the focus of that. And as we start to make those meetings public, we will invite more members of the public to try and get their input.
Can I suggest, Rod, that you invite all the commissioners to the next program committee, so that if you want us to have a discussion, that would be a great place to have it. That anyone who has strong feelings and opinions can attend the program committee and be part of the discussion.
Okay. Mary and Anthony and I are in discussions about the next programming committee, because I have a city function on their scheduled date. But if I do that, I will go through the process of making that a public meeting, because we're required to do that. And then we can have that type of robust debate. What I'll do, Mary, and I'll send this out to Anthony, is I'll broaden that discussion to all of us. And then we can kind of figure out the best time to do that. I look to you and Anthony really to be kind of the chairs of that committee. So this is more or less, while I facilitate, this is more or less yours and Anthony's meeting to run.
Got it.
Okay. So it's one more date that I have to add and move. Well, okay, this is March. I'm sorry. This was a March date. This is Mary, you and I were talking about February's date.
Right.
And we're continuing to have those committee meetings in February. It's just the commissioners meeting we don't have next month.
The program committee was set for February 7th. But you may not have seen the emails that were going around this morning. It looks like it might be January 30th.
Okay. All right. Well, that's something you and I will discuss. I mean, if we're going to start these meetings in February, we have to open this back up to the other commissioners.
And I think you guys can email offline, select a date, and send out an invite to the commissioner. So are there any other feedback or questions around the physical improvements, the 5 areas that George mentioned? All of those things were discussed and approved in the 2023 budget. And so now really we're revisiting it. So that way we are all on the same page and getting input as we move forward. Last call for comments. Go ahead, Greg.
No, just to clarify, we're not choosing. We're just trying to whittle the list from 66. That's just too many things for to expect action on, to a smaller list for the Q1. That's all. Not that we're taking money away from anything. We're just trying to provide more clarity for programs committee and Rod. And it sounds like January 30th is our day, but we'll wait for an email to confirm.
Okay.
Great.
Greg, what's the 66 that you're referring to?
Well, George showed his tracker, right? And there, I was just quickly like looking up all the lines. We got like 1.1, 1.2, 1.
Okay.
Like you added those things up, and we just approved so much work. Okay. Let's go to the questions and comments from our commissioners. Floor is open. Anyone have any comments?
I have one. Would it be legitimate to talk about property taxes? Even because we do assess to run the SSA. I know the West End, the Kimbrough Plaza with taxes almost tripled. Is anyone property areas experiencing similar? I guess
I can speak broadly. The EAV from last year, or the 2021 to the 2022 year, I think it was like 45, 46, and it went up to about 51. So everybody's experiencing a significant increase based on those property valuations going up. I could say the same thing personally because I live down the street from 53rd Street. So I kind of got that shock too as a property owner.
Yeah, I mean, this was like triple, and of course we have an attorneys look into it in terms of whether or not, contesting it. But I was just wondering, is that something that's across the board? It doesn't seem to be, with that substantial amount.
Well, mine didn't triple because I'd have to quit and get another job.
Yeah.
But
Okay. So what other questions does any other property owners on the call have regarding, or statements they'd like to share? Property values are going up. That's not always a bad thing. I mean, I guess it depends on who you ask, but I don't think it's a bad thing.
Part of it is also the shift in strategy and adjusting some of the tax base away from private homes over onto businesses. So the businesses are paying a higher share, which is why, I haven't opened my mouth so far because my home property taxes went down.
Hmm.
Now, maybe it's because I'm getting old, but still, it was a reduction. So it's fine with me.
I need to move in with you. That hasn't been me.
I can comment just on George's point. We have some leased space downtown in which our lease requires us to be responsible for our share of the taxes in the building. And we've seen significant jumps in taxes on those office buildings downtown, even though, there's significant vacancy and other financial challenges. So I think, George, your comment is right on that shift is happening.
And if we follow real estate, which I know Angie follows, that, you know, rents are starting to stabilize. That's the latest news that's coming out, is that the decrease from 2020 and then there was a significant increase over the last 2 years as the world is returning. But now it's going to start to stabilize. So hopefully that will be good things for our businesses that don't own properties and need to lease.
I certainly hope that increase, cause the, equalize in terms of value to the property. That would be wonderful, but
Mhm.
let's hope it crosses over.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right. Well, if there's no further business and there's no objection, we will adjourn. All right. There
Good.
being no,
Greg, I
yep.
tell you keeping these meetings in good form.
Yeah.
You're not going over. So far, great. Okay.
There being no objection, this meeting is adjourned. We will see each other March. Our next meeting is March. Do we have a date? Sorry, Rod, do you know the date of the next
March
meeting?
21st.
21,
March 21. Great. So
7
if we don't,
PM.
great. Okay. So if we don't see you at the program committee, we'll see you in March. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one, everyone.